says I'm live. Okay, I think I'm live. Hello. Happy Sunday of Memorial Day weekend. It is incredibly windy here, so if you can hear the wind in the background, it's loud. I can hear it through the window, so I'm just wondering if it's picking up on my microphone. It probably is not, but you never know. So really, really big news as of yesterday, and I owe it to many of you who tune into these live, live Q&As, either live on the spot or you tune in, later on when it's convenient for your schedule, because I'm not very planned in my lives. But really big news. I did not think that this was going to happen until at least the middle of June. But yesterday, I got the email to apply for the YouTube Creators program. So that means I am hopefully going to be monetized here in the next, few days, weeks, whatever. Supposedly, the review process can take up to a month. Luckily for me, I had a really large acceleration in the number of watch hours last week. Like I said, I was at about almost 3,900 watch hours going into last week. So I needed 100 more. I anticipated that was going to take about a month to get those watch hours, because that's just kind of been the average pace. But for whatever reason, I don't know if it is the new incorporation of shorts or what, but I ended up crossing that 4,000 watch hours in 12-month mile marker barrier. Words are hard right now. But so for those of you who don't know, in order to be monetized on YouTube, you need, it's like 4 things, and it's 2 of them that are really not in your control right away. The first one is you need 1,000 subscribers, which I got that last June, I believe. And it maybe was even no, it wasn't 2020. Definitely wasn't 2020. So it was June of last year. I got this 1,000 subscriber mark, which that also allowed me to go live on mobile. So if you guys caught my live last Monday, where I literally just real timed putting baby crickets in bins and talked about some of the process and all of that kind of stuff for 2 hours. So for those of you who watched the full 2 hours, thanks. I hope it wasn't the most boring thing in the world. But the only way that I was able to do that was because I had 1,000 subscribers, and so I could go live on my mobile. So that was what happened with 1,000 subscribers. So that was one piece of the monetization overall. And then the other piece of the monetization, which was a lot harder than I anticipated, it was a lot more than I anticipated, was you need 4,000 total watch hours within a 12-month rolling period. If you want to do the math on that, 4,000 watch hours in 12 months is the equivalent of somebody watching your content for 24 hours a day for 166 days straight. So it's a lot. It's more than I thought. And so I think when I hit that 1,000 subscriber mark, I didn't realize that was going to be so far off in the future for me to get to that 4,000 watch hour, and I wasn't really in tune with what it was going to take in terms of consistency and all of that kind of stuff. But so I think I was at about 1,800 watch hours last June, and that was kind of without really a plan or anything like that. No consistent uploads. I mean, I was sort of consistent in the uploads because at the beginning of 2021, I had set the goal of 2 YouTube videos a month because I did want to grow my YouTube presence. I did want to attempt to get monetized last year because for me, it's a great way for me to share knowledge and do all of that, but it's also a great way for me to add an additional diversified income stream that I get to put evergreen content, get to help people, get to interact, but it's just one of those things where I don't necessarily have to be there all the time, and it can hopefully be generating some income. The amount of income, probably not very much, to be determined on that one. I have to, so right now, so the way it happens, if any of you are ever looking to get monetized. The way it happens is if you go into YouTube Studio, there's a section that is called monetization. And up until you've hit the criteria for monetization, there's like this little box that has your progress towards each of the things that you need for monetization. So I think on the left hand side, it was total number of subscribers. On the right upper quadrant was your total watch hours of the 4,000 watch hours. So once you cross that 4,000 watch hour, assuming that you have 1,000 subscribers as well, you get a completely new screen. And it's a 3-step process, and that the first one I now can't remember, but I could go back and look. The second one was setting up your Google AdSense account, and I actually set that up a couple weeks ago just because I've never run Google ads, and so I was like, well, I've blown like $100 a month on other things, so let's try and see if this works. Oh, hello from Romania, very cool. Hello, welcome. So, uh, those first 2 things I was able to do, and then the third step is what they do with all of the accounts after they've crossed those thresholds that they need to cross. Threshold. That was the word I was looking for earlier. Anyways, once you've crossed all of those thresholds, then I assume someone at YouTube, I don't really know how that process works. They actually review your account, I guess, to like make sure that you are worth the advertisers putting advertisement on your videos. From all of the other YouTube education videos that I've watched about growing your YouTube and monetizing your YouTube, the fact that they have had advertisements running on my videos for almost 2 years now. One of my videos has over 30,000 views and is consistently, like, every month, my most views. Um, that is a really good sign because they're already doing that and they weren't paying me for those, and I don't get, back pay for all of that money that they've made off of my content, but that's another story for another day. So I think someone goes through and reviews that, make sure that you don't have any like community violations for like copyright or I don't know, like inappropriate content or stuff like that. Once you do all of that stuff, then I believe then you're monetized. After that, like, I don't know. I'll share with you guys as the process goes, like what actually happens. I'm just really excited that I finally got the email and crossed that threshold. And I know from other creators, again, I'm pretty sure that they don't like you don't get your first check from them until you've accumulated until you've accumulated at least $100 in revenue. So I have no idea what like the pay rate's going to be, how fast it's going to come, any of those things. I just am excited. Um, so good evening. I will get to the questions here shortly. Sorry, let me focus. I see the stuff in the chat. I will get to you in a moment. So yeah, that is so I suppose I'm telling you all that story to tell you thank you for tuning in. Thank you for watching. Thank you for those of you who I asked in the last like week or so as I got really, really close, like, hey, can you just open a tab and watch my video? Just leave it play. You can mute it. You don't have to watch it. Just give me some watch hours. So appreciate all of you who did that. Without you guys, the monetization really wouldn't have been possible. So appreciate you. I will be coming out with more content, obviously. This week, I am hoping to get filmed a recap of my trip to Washington, D.C. as to why I was there and all of that kind of stuff. And then I will get back to more of the cricket educational content. I really do want to incorporate some more of the cooking with the crickets, the recipes of the crickets, the examples of me eating crickets, all of those things that people have asked about. Because at the end of the day, yes, this is very much a cricket focused channel of growing the crickets, and that's where I've seen the most growth and gotten the most feedback. But like that's only one half of my business, and so it's really important for me to educate everyone else about like what we're actually doing with the crickets. Not that feeding them to your lizard and whatnot is not a great thing, but there's a lot of education that goes into getting people to eat crickets for the first time. So Thank you for being here. And I'm going to go to the chat before I go to pick up where I left off last week in an attempt to not make it a 2-hour live, which ironically I did a day later in the actual Cricket Barn. But in the attempt to not make it a 2-hour live last week, I was so far behind on questions that I'm going to pick up where I left off last week and cover any additional. So as always, if you have questions, please drop them in the chat. If I don't get to them this week, I will get to them next week. I don't have a 2-day event next week, so I will be back again next Sunday unless something dramatic happens, which it could, because, entrepreneurship and putting out fires and whatnot. Okay, so good evening, watching from Kigali, Rwanda. I hope I said that right. Welcome. Very cool. Thanks for tuning in. Your videos are very educational words are hard. Your videos are very educational and practical. Keep it up. What's the requirement for becoming your outgrower farmer? Okay, would you consider importing from Rwanda? So interesting. I am actually going to do a video about bringing on growers, what you need, uh, who I'm looking for, all of that kind of stuff. Currently not interested in importing crickets from out of the country, and quite frankly, currently not interested in importing crickets from out of state even. All of my growers currently are within the state of Iowa, and I will keep it that way for the foreseeable future. And the reason for that is just keeping a really tight supply chain. Just economically, sustainability, all of the things focused. It's the best for us as a business right now to keep everything really small, tight, and local. We are still, even with the experience that we have, we're constantly learning, we're constantly innovating on what works for raising crickets and what doesn't. So, I feel like I'm going to sneeze. You know when it's caught in your nose and you can feel it coming, but maybe it won't. Maybe it won't. It passed. Anyways, excuse me. Sorry about that. So one of the other reasons why I really don't want to get too drastic in my geographic spread of the cricket farming right now is I'm getting the hang of raising crickets here in Iowa, particularly in central Iowa, but even across the state of Iowa, conditions don't vary a ton. So as I start getting out of state and further away, there's different conditions in different locations. Different conditions have different challenges. It's a lot harder for me to advise and adapt and all of that for someone who is in, I don't know, Texas or Hawaii or Pacific Northwest. Your conditions are going to be very different from mine. So your problems are going to be very different from mine. So it's really hard for me to be able to properly advise. Secondly, in terms of consistency of the product, it's important that they all eat the same thing. Our feed is actually sourced 7 miles south of here. So that, again, keeping our supply chain small from an economic perspective, from a cost perspective, and everything that way, it just makes sense for us to stay within a certain economic radius because transportation costs, and as of recent, it costs a lot more. So shipping things is just not sustainable for us. And so right now, like I said, for right now, we are only bringing on growers in the state of Iowa. I'm not saying it's going to be that way forever necessarily, but for right now, that's where we're at. But I will do an extended video about becoming a grower. What do you need? Where do you need to be? What to expect? All of those things that will be coming out at some point. Great question. All right, so I'm going to pull up. Excuse me, my nose is running now that I felt like I needed to sneeze, and we are just struggling. Okay, let me bring up the comment section. I know that the one that I was looking at is probably more than, it's probably almost 2 weeks old. So let me see. Okay, I think that I covered up until my pinheads are not getting any bigger. Why? I think so. So on to the next question, which was Is it harmful to use peat moss that has fertilizer? The only brand I could find is Miracle Grow, but it has plant food incorporated. I forget what the amount ratios are, but they seemed small. Should I look for something else instead, or would this be okay? So for this one, this is a question that comes up, and like I get it that not everybody has everything access to exact same things I have. Again, going back to the a lot easier to control conditions and things like that when you keep your supply chains small and tight. You know what to expect. You know it's there, so I get, like, not everyone has access to the same stuff I do. We use an organic peat moss that actually you can get it at Lowe's, you can get it at Menards, you can probably get it at Home Depot. Those are all local that we have here. You can probably get it at Fleet Farm and probably at Tyson's as well. So, all of that being said, that doesn't have any fertilizer in it, no plant food, no anything. Do not get a breeding substrate that has any sort of fertilizer in it. It's going to be very detrimental to your crickets. Either you're not going to have babies hatch, you don't know the impact of them over their life cycle. If you can't find non fertilized peat moss, switch to something else. Something like coconut coir, something like topsoil, something you can even use sand. I know that's used a lot in Southeast Asia. Whatever you do not use some sort of substrate with any sort of added fertilizer. It's just really there's too many unknowns, number one. Number two, the high salt content is not going to be good for your incubating eggs. So no, just no. I don't really have anything else to say on that other than find something else. If you can't find peat moss without plant food in it, there's other options. Like I said, coconut coir, sand, um, um, topsoil, literally anything else. Okay. Next question. What do you do with so many crickets? See, this is why I need to have more educational videos about what I'm actually doing with the crickets in the end. Um, very much when I started this channel, the initial idea, the initial plan, the initial big picture was to create something that wish would have existed when I started. And that is like a really good resource on how do I raise these crickets? Like, what are the basics? I'm not gonna be able to provide you, like, some really large scaled robotic setup, for one thing, like, that's never the route I necessarily wanna go. I'm totally fine with automation where it makes sense, but I just don't think that complete robotization, robotiti using robots exclusively, I just don't think is realistic, nor is that the route I wanna go. I don't have the capital to make that happen, and I just don't think it's necessary at this point, in the insects for food market. That being said, um, I can show you, like, the basics of rearing crickets, the basics of, hatching, harvesting, water, food, like, all of the little things that you need to master before you scale anyways. Um, those resources just were not available back when I started in the beginning of 2018. There were a few. I would actually say the best resources came from the reptile community. They had the best like tips and tricks and all of the things like that. But this I in the beginning I just wanted to create something that was going to be a resource for people getting into this. As it's evolved and as I've, grown my following and gotten more attention and all of that kind of stuff, I do need to start incorporating more of, the processing into the final product. The why would you eat crickets? The how do you eat crickets? And not just crickets. Like, why would you eat all sorts of different insects? What other insects are available? All of those questions are things that I really want to, dive deeper into and cover. I obviously will continue to share tips and tricks as we come along with them. Like I said, we're learning as we go on this cricket rearing thing. So we're learning new efficiencies all the time. We're having new epiphanies about maybe things we should be feeding and maybe things we shouldn't. So it's a constant experiment, and I'm happy to, share the results of those experiments to help move this forward. But getting back to the question, what do I use? What do I do with so many crickets? I turn them into food for people. They are delicious protein packed snacks that maybe is uncommon here in the West, but in other parts of the world, very, very common. They're delicious and nutritious. They're 64% protein, so double the protein of beef. They have iron, calcium, magnesium, all 9 essential amino acids, prebiotic fiber. Like they're very, very good for you. And so, what I do with the crickets is I turn them into delicious protein packed snacks. So that's why I need so many of them. It takes between 3 and 5,000 crickets to make a pound of dried crickets. So that's either cricket powder or just dried crickets themselves. I have 3 product lines if you don't know. I have 8 flavors of my roasted crickets. They taste a lot like a sunflower seed or the crumbs at the bottom of the chip bag. I have 6 flavors of my cricket bars. And then I have 3 different sizes of my 100% cricket powder. The most versatile of my products is definitely the 100% cricket powder, but it's also the largest education curve for consumers. So I think it has the most potential in the long run in some respects. But for people to adopt it and understand ways to utilize it, that needs to become more of my focus on this channel in some respects. So you'll see more recipes with me, hopefully, and more examples of me eating the crickets. I know I did start a little like live cooking with crickets series, and I've kind of fallen off the wagon on that. I'll work on it. I'll get back to it. But so yeah, that's what I do with crickets. That's why I need so many, is I eat them. Raise them, kill them, cook them, and eat them. It's always what I say. And people kind of are like, oh my gosh, how could you eat your crickets? And I say, well, what do you think that the cattle farmers or the pig farmers or the chicken farmers do? You just are so removed from it, you don't think about it. So, okay, let me see. Okay, so this is actually just a comment that I want to share. And I'm super excited that it got shared with me because I enjoy you guys' successes when you find my channel because you're like, what the heck, my crickets are dying, or what the heck, I want to start raising crickets for XYZ reason. And then you come back and you're like, hey, I hatched crickets. This is my first time, and I went from 100 crickets to multiple thousands. Like, I love it. So I'm going to share this from Joseph Watts. I'm on my second hatching. Originally got 2,000 crickets, but hole in the box at the post office. Oh, that's a bummer. Your poor post office people. It's funny because I actually, our local post office here, when I didn't have my own label printer and all of that stuff, I would go to the post office to ship all my packages, and I had quite a few of them, so I'd have conversations with them, and they told me stories about worms, like super worms getting out, or mealworms, or crickets. Like, I it's probably more common than we'd like to admit. um but a hole in the box at the post office, 300 to 500 were dead, so I started with about 1,000, give or take. Happens. Shipping is really stressful on crickets. It's just it's part of the reason I really don't ever want in that game too. So I got 5 egg trays from my first hatch, and I'm presently on my 3rd egg tray on my oldest adults. I would estimate that I have 70,000 crickets now, and will triple that in the next 3 to 4 weeks. Your videos have helped very much. Thank you. Oh, go on, Joseph. I love it. I love it. Love it. That's awesome. Super glad that you are seeing some success. Very cool. I hope that they are still hatching and panning out. Okay, next question is from Garrick. How do you move baby crickets from the peat moss medium into their next habitat? Do you just leave the hatching pod and they jump out? Do you blow them gently? How do you dump them out without dumping all the peat moss too? So this is actually a comment on one of my shorts. That's one thing that I've incorporated in the last 2 weeks. Just kind of messing with the shorter form video with less editing and all that kind of stuff. Blame it on TikTok, if you will. But so this is, I had a whole bunch of baby crickets hatching last week, and I've had to be disciplined to leave open roughly 40 bins for my next round because I need to stagger my barn. But so I've just been posting some shorts. So this one comes from one of putting baby crickets in their new home. So how do I move from one to the next habitat? So I don't force them out of the peat moss. They crawl out, they're looking for food and water. I always tell people the only time that the crickets bite me is when they're babies. And it's only because they think that I'm either food or that I'm water. And so, well, probably food. They wouldn't bite me if I was water. But so they think I'm food. So if they get on me, which they do, and they bite and it hurts. So baby crickets bite. The rest of the crickets leave me alone, but those bite. Um, so I just let them crawl out of the peat moss, crawl out of their hatching breeding trays at their own pace, at their own leisure. The only time that I do like blow on the trays is I blow on the bottoms because especially if the breeding trays have started to get like really rusty, they like cling to the bottom of them and I just don't want to set them down. Like they'll come off and I won't smash most of them if I set them down, but I blow on the bottom to get those off of there. I will warn you that if you are going to blow on your breeding trays at all, if you have long hair, make sure that it's pulled back because you will end up with crickets in your hair if you do not. And if you have really long hair like me, make sure that that's where if you watch that 2 hour live, you'll notice like when I'm messing around with the incubators, I'm like holding on to my hair often because my hair is just too long, even in a ponytail, it just hangs into the bin. And I just don't feel like taking a whole bunch of biting baby crickets home with me. So I don't really do anything to get them out other than let them crawl out in search of food and water. So how many crickets would you grow in this kind of bin and how big is it again? So my bins are 50 gallons and we shoot for ending up with anywhere between 5 and 7,000 crickets by the end. Our mortality rates are fairly high. But then again, I will say that the way that we measure out our pinheads, generally speaking, is by weight, and that's not super accurate. The weight of insects varies wildly based off of their hydration. So that's where we'll see most cricket farms that are shipping in the live market or doling out in the live market, they measure out in volume. And the reason that they do that is because it's much more accurate because that is not as wildly affected by hydration. So hope that helps. Do 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 do. Oh, can I ask what it is that you do? Just curious. Again, this came from a short, and this was from my short that had the title "Nearly 175,000 Baby Crickets," which I can imagine for someone who is just stumbling upon my channel is like, "What the heck?" So I raise crickets for human consumption and turn them into tasty alternative protein snacks, and they're delicious. Somebody watched the whole 2 hours of my putting baby crickets in bins. Thank you for bumping the watch hours. Appreciate it. I don't think that I have any more questions. I don't. They were all just well wishes and good lucks on the monetization. So I got to imagine that some of you who were making those comments, thank you so, so much for doing your part in getting me monetized. I do really appreciate it. It's one of those things that, like I said, I never really set out necessarily to get monetized. Like obviously, you don't want to do anything without getting some sort of value out of it, I guess. But I really did just want to create a resource for people that I just wish I would have had back in early 2018 when I started this. It could have saved me a lot of heartbreak, and a lot of dead crickets. Although, I said it last week and I'll say it again. If you haven't killed, something like 100,000 crickets, you're not a real cricket farmer yet. It's just kind of a rite of passage that we all go through. So I really do appreciate you guys for tuning in, for watching all my content, for all the comments, the shares, all of that stuff. It really does. It helped me finally get over the hump of getting monetized. And I will probably do, so like I said, this week the plan is I will sit down and maybe I'll do it right after this. We'll see. I will sit down and film a recap of what I was doing in Washington, D.C., talking a little bit about that and what that experience was like. And then I will probably do a video about, how long it took me to get monetized on here. Because I think, for some folks that have a YouTube channel or are thinking about starting a YouTube channel, it doesn't have to be about crickets. It could be about anything. For those of you who are curious about, how long it took for me to get monetized, like what I think actually really helped in the end, I will probably put together a video about that because it's one of those things that I think people are curious about. I know I was definitely curious about it as I was going through it. And I think we see a lot of overnight successes, people that go viral and all of a sudden are monetized and things like that. Like this was not the case with me. I wish crickets would go viral, but they just haven't. So I'll give you a very realistic look at what it took to get monetized. And then, yeah. So as always, please drop any questions or comments in the comment section and I will get to them at a different time. I am planning on doing another one of these next Sunday because I only have a 1-day market next week. It's the Des Moines Downtown Farmers Market. So, I will be back next week to answer questions. So if you are watching this later, just drop the comment in the comment section and I will get to it next week. And hopefully, patience is a virtue. I was going to say, hopefully by next week, I will be through the monetization process and have a little bit more of a inside scoop on that. But I'm with the holiday weekend and everything, I'm not super confident that that will be the case. So appreciate you for tuning in. Thank you guys for watching. Seriously, I can't say it enough. We're monetized. So, well, almost. We're almost monetized. But we're overall the major humps. Just got to get through this review. So, have a great weekend. If you're here in the US, have a great long Memorial Day weekend. Enjoy your day off tomorrow. Be safe out there. Don't do anything too crazy. And eat some crickets because, why not? See you guys.